Welcome, everyone, to the People Strategy Forum. Today's guest has a question that stops you in your tracks. In the age of AI, are you still the future? Piers Fallowfield-Cooper is an executive coach and mentor with a rare talent. He helps accomplished leaders pause, reflect, and reimagine what next really looks like. With decades of experience in coaching top executives, Piers doesn't just talk about leadership, he walks alongside it through reinventions, reckonings, and revolutions. His new book isn't just a how-to, it's a how to hold up to the mirror to see if you are still the future. And it challenged us to stay human, stay relevant, and stay true to what really great leadership has always required, that curiosity, courage, and connection. For founders and executives wondering how to lead with heart and how to persevere to be on the leading edge in a fast changing world that never seems to let up on, on all of us. It's a conversation you've all been waiting for. So let's welcome Piers Fallowfield-Cooper. Welcome, Piers.
Oh, Sam, that's just lovely. Thank you. I'm very touched. That was a smashing introduction. Thank you.
Yes, well, one thing, Piers, I really wanted to be on top of my game because I know you are a mentor to top executives around the world with over 30 years of experience. I mean, you've mentored over 120 C-suite executives. Truly impressive feat. And Piers, you're a self-proclaimed late bloomer
Hmm.
in life. So I'd love to just start out a little bit of kind of rewinding the tapes a bit in your life and how things started out for you, and why were you such a late bloomer?
That's a nicer question than the usual question we start with, which is tell us about you, which always, I'm quite literate and quite a good communicator, but that somehow always freezes me, that one. I can, what do they want to know?
Yes.
And I think it's an interesting thought because context is everything. So I was a bouncing baby, a happy bouncing baby, and a good pupil, and loved school. But a certain point came where I started noticing that the amount of time and effort I had to put in to get things done was considerably more than my classmates, who would polish off an essay quickly or hand in the homework fast. And it didn't really dawn on me until a lot later that something was going on. And it was a conversation in my 20s with my mum about how difficult I found spelling was. So, for example, if I was on a desert island and the only way off was to spell immediately, and you only got three guesses a day, I'd still be on the desert island. I mean, there's so many combinations there, IMM, IME. So I was talking to Mum about how bad my spelling still was. And she said, "Oh, well, dear, it always was," she said. And when you were little, about 7, I realized that you didn't know half the words, you were just guessing them. So 2 and 2 makes 4, a few tests and examinations later, and I was diagnosed as dyslexic, which has its advantages and disadvantages. The disadvantage is A, you can't spell, and B, often the words don't make sense. The advantages are you kind of experience the world in a different way, and experiencing, seeing, and understanding things that other people aren't understanding is often a big competitive advantage.
Hmm.
Um, so it took me a while to get going, but this is an important thing. Um, all the learning is always in the doing. So it doesn't matter how many times we read about it, how many times we think about it. It's not until we start doing it that we understand what it's really about. And so once I actually got into the workplace and really started doing it, I'm moderately intuitive. And so the intuitive plus the dyslexia meant that I always was kind of reading the system and trying to work out the missing bits. And so in different careers at different times, that's been incredibly useful. working with senior leaders, it's phenomenally useful because I kind of just get stuff. Then I have to loop back and empirically check that what I've just kind of sensed is the right thing. I'm not making stuff up. You have to do an empirical check. So yeah, it took me a while to get going. And really now, I only really now feel that I'm really getting going, which is when everybody's telling me, oh, shouldn't you be sort of winding down a bit? And I thought, "Oh, why would you want to do that? Um, I'm very fortunate. I'm paid well for work I would happily do for free, which I believe is the definition of a perfect job.
Yes, for sure.
So
So
one thing, as we mentioned, my dyslexia, um, as the interviewer, you're going to have to look after you, me, and our listeners and viewers. That if I drift off too far, you rescue me back, all right? Because
I will.
sometimes we can go a long way from home.
For sure. I definitely will there, Piers. So now, of course, you're very accomplished and you're at the top of your game. But all throughout life, as you mentioned, there was that sense of being behind, that being, somebody's getting this done faster, somebody's doing this. And I feel like I have to constantly persevere to do my best to catch up and so forth. And I think that a lot of leaders in around the world are feeling that very acutely right now, feeling that pressure with the onset of artificial intelligence and systems and just the pace of work. Things are moving faster and faster and faster all the time, and they continually have to get on their get back up on that horse and be at the top of their game. And so are there times that in your career when you pondered, am I still the future? And what kept you going in that moment?
When you first said were the times in my career, I remember once hiding under my desk because there was just so much going on,
Hmm.
literally everywhere, too much. I said, I'm going to hide under my desk. And it was actually a very good thing too, because my executive team just burst out laughing. And in that moment, we were kind of free because we were also, I said, oh, I'm going to hide under desks. It's just too horrible. Um, so I went to the same school and I'd met but did not know properly, although some of my friends did, an artist called David Bowie.
Hmm. Yes.
And David had a wonderful, he had a lot of talent, but he had a particular characteristic. He always was reinventing himself. You see this a lot in artists, really good artists, painters like David Hockney, um, always reinventing themselves and how they view the world. And I think it's for all of us to do all the time. So my mum, who was a very, very intuitive woman, she always preferred to be ahead of where she needed to be. And my dad was an engineer, so he was a planner. So I was brought up in a household where we were always thinking about, what's next, where do we go, what do we need to do. So I think it's a kind of, one of the key things about the book is I talk about reading the signals in the system. So we should be able to, as regular humans, irrespective of those of us in leadership positions, but we should be able to actually pay attention to the system. All the information's there. Now, whether we're A, smart enough to recognize it, and then B, act on it, are different things, but all the information's in the system. So when you get to the point where you're not enjoying it so much, that's a very big signal. That should be there should be alarm bells, lights flashing. Okay, so why aren't I enjoying it so much? Could it be that it's become too repetitious, that I know it all? Could it be that there's a change in leadership or saying that I don't like it? So you must pay attention to these. So my biggest ever reinvention time was I had two of them. One was I was working for a founder of a business and he'd hired me to come and sort everything out. Well, he wanted to retire. Of course, he didn't. He just wanted to sort it out. And I was working with him and my neck was getting I'm going to make a sideways warning now for listeners and viewers. I read a fascinating article by George Soros's son.
Mm.
And George Soros had always talked about, when he felt his position was wrong and this and that. And his son said in an interview, oh, you can always tell when dad's got a bad position. His back starts aching. So his son had read the signals, when dad comes, oh, my back's, horrible position. So I get this stiff neck if I'm very tense. And my neck was playing up and, oh, it was horrible. And I'd been to Hong Kong, Singapore and before in business, but never been to Thailand. And I went to Thailand. I had a couple of weeks away and I came back really quite, it's the first time I'd ever been with so many people who had so little, who were so content. And of course, the culture and the kind of teaching of Buddhism, which is, about not wanting, was part of this. Well, within 2 days, my neck's back, and I'm heading towards what I jokingly call my Richard III position. Went like this, which if you don't pay attention to the stiffening, that's where you end up.
Yes.
I'm not doing this. So I rang up the realtor, the estate agent, and said, what could I get for the house? I rang up the car dealership, what can I get for the car? And I was prepared to give it all up because it no longer was, I always use the word match and fit. So that takes out all the emotion of these decisions. You can ask yourself the question, is this still a good match and fit for you? So it's like gears coming together. If they come together elegantly, like on a shift stick on a manual, then that's good. If you're crunching, then there's something wrong. So I like the expression match and fit because then you can just ask the simple question, is this still a good match and fit? And the answer was no. So I was prepared to dump everything. And of course, in that moment, I was free. And so an old friend rang up and said, oh, I've been asked if I wanted to go for this job. What do you think? And I told him honestly, I thought it was a bit of a stretch, a couple of years you could do it. He said, that's what I thought. Can I put your name forward? And I said, sure. And he did. And we had a great interview. But we had a great interview because I wasn't hungry. I wasn't desperate to get out. We just had a great interview, a conversation. I took the job and 11 happy years. So all the signals are there. The next time I knew I had to reinvent was, and the business I was running, we sold it. We had a 3-year deal. And at the end of the period, then the business was going to be taken over, So I knew it was coming. And so that was a slow motion. So how are you going to reinvent? What are you going to do? And that one was remarkably easy. And I think it's universal and very valuable. My questions were simple. What did I love doing? And so there were 3 things I loved doing. So I loved working with my cleverest clients, the BPs, the Citibanks, the Morgan Stanleys. It was very cerebral energy, what do they want to achieve? I loved being CEO, captain of the ship, full speed ahead, what we can do. And I loved growing my top team. I'd spent a lot of time being an internal mentor, growing my top team, investing in it, encouraging the people further down to invest in their teams. And each of them had an energy. One was quite egocentric, the captain of the ship. One was very cerebral, working my clever client. And the third one was from the heart. And I thought, that's what I want to do. So I wrote a one-page piece of paper, my new career, everything down, and I waited for the phone to ring. And the phone did ring. Someone who'd worked for me years before said, running a tech business by then, said, Piers, I've got a dysfunctional sales team. Could you sort them out for me? Ooh, I know how to do that. So that was my very first piece of work. And then it just evolved. And I'm very, very keen. I'm not a goal setter. I actually wrote a piece about the foolishness of goal setting. And the foolishness of goal setting is that it's quite likely that you get the goals you set. So someone bright in the back of the room is putting their hand up, saying, well, why is that a bad idea? Well, it's a bad idea because your ambition and what you can imagine is limited to your position now. So it's much better to set the directionality of where you're going, because humans by nature are teleological. So set the direction you're heading, then deal with what comes up. So a prime example is Arm, which many of your listeners will know as a name. So Arm is a unique business. Arm produce it, well, they don't produce, they design chips. They're probably the most successful business worth $150 billion now. So they didn't have any goals. They had a kind of mantra, and their mantra was MIPS for the masses. That was their kind of guiding principle. And if they'd had goals, they probably would have missed out on their biggest opportunity. Because their biggest opportunity was they chose not to be a manufacturer of chips, but to be a designer of chips. So they worked with dozens and dozens and dozens of competing businesses, all of whom trust Arm to keep their IP confidential. And that's the way they managed to get this incredible growth. And you wouldn't have, round the kitchen table with your goal setting, you wouldn't have goal setted that we won't be a manufacturer of chips. You
Right.
just would not. Well, it's highly unlikely you would have done that.
That's
So
right.
I think I answered your question a bit, did I? Or have
Yes.
you
Yes,
got another?
absolutely. And so to kind of recap on that, I mean, and so as you mentioned, when you can, a lot of people can feel change is coming, and the important thing is to listen to the signs, identify them early, and then once you identify those signs,
Mhm.
reflect on what is really important to me, what is going to make that next big change, and don't hold ourselves to simple short-term goals that are can restrain our real growth. Be imaginative and think deep into the future on what could possibly be.
It's lovely. That's a lovely summary. I'd add a little thing. Um, if you don't pay attention and it's a surprise, you end up with what I call hungry shopper syndrome.
Yeah.
Now, the hungry shopper never buys wisely. We've all done this. We've gone to the supermarket hungry. Number one, we buy too much stuff. Then we eat the cookies, the biscuits in the car on the way back. Then we don't want the thing we bought for breakfast anyway. So it's not a good plan. So you want to be ahead of this. Now, your next question could about, so how do we spot the trends? So when I was thinking about my new career, so this is 20, yeah, around 2000. Um, so I ruled out all the things that were quite interesting, but I thought would be disintermediated by the internet. So, for example, I love travel, and I thought, oh, I could be a high-class travel agent, boutique travel agent. And I thought, no, the internet's going to take that away. And so I went all through those. The one I got totally wrong was real estate, because I could sell rich real estate. I mean, fancy real estate. I could sell fancy real estate. Um, I thought it would be taken out by the internet, and it hasn't. The internet has just been a kind of backup, a kind of backup support tool to it, but it hasn't. It's taken away all those that Saturday morning envelope you get of all the properties because it is now online, and makes it an even more febrile market as everybody's fighting over the property. But it didn't take it out. So you must put into your thinking not just today does it suit, but is it likely to suit a bit in the future? So as you grow, I mean, you see, one of the challenges is that often we look at jobs or opportunities where they are now. What we should actually be looking at is where could they go? Because presumably we're going to grow and pay attention and learn and change. So is the potential? Is the company big enough? Maybe you might like an international posting. All those kind of things should be in your thinking. But always, as you well know, when choosing, choose for culture.
Right.
Choose for culture.
Yeah, we're going to
Um,
dig into that culture piece in just a moment. But one thing that I would like to talk about is that when a lot of leaders out there are when they feel this change is coming, they're starting to feel the pressure. And then they also we were kind of in the age of social media as well. They're kind of looking at their colleagues uh, and talking to their competition, and they're seeing that, wow, they're doing some great things. Am I doing enough? Am I going to be enough for the future? Am I on top of my game? Is there some of that? Is there some of that social media mindset to where we're always looking at the out the beautiful window at people being their best, and is it taking us down as a leader? Can we should we be checking our mindset at times?
100%. So, you use the word pressure. So pressure tends to be self-induced because that tends to be we're not making the best choices. Now, there may be situations, occasional times where you really just have to do whatever is necessary. But that shouldn't be a daily occurrence. You should have one thing I find when I'm working with leaders, the amount of time that is stolen from them
Mm.
that, so most people are using an electronic calendar of some kind. It's all beautiful. Uh, a large number of personal assistants, I suspect, seem to think that the fuller it is, the better it is, the more productive and the more successful. Why is there no bathroom breaks on there? I mean, how are you supposed to manage that? I
That's
mean,
right.
could I just stretch for a minute?
Mm.
Could I leave the building for 2 minutes? I mean, we just have to shout stop. We just have to time out. So the first place to do is your personal timeout. And back to asking the question, when does it work for you? Oh, I love it when a meeting gets cancelled. Hmm, that might be telling us something.
Yeah,
So why don't you start putting some secret meetings in that, only have you in? Uh, here's the challenge. The challenge, Sam, is that when we are overworked, we become average. So if we're playing Roger Federer across the net, the best we could ever do is just hold the racket up, hope the ball hits it and it just goes back over. And even if we were playing our very best game in that situation, the most we can ever do is just get the ball back. There's no chance ever for where would I like to hit the ball? What do you think might happen? Because there's just too much. So I read a very interesting piece of research about peak performance. And the research said that there were really only three components. And number one, are you getting enough sleep? Because it doesn't matter how good the rest is or anything else, if you're not getting enough sleep, you don't win. Number two, is the environment you're working in positive and happy? And number three, are there some agreed timelines, some deadlines for getting work done? And that's not about, dumping stuff on people. Oh, you've got to have this by Friday, but it's about discussing. So how long is this going to take and have a timeline and an agreed deadline on it. And that was when you distill it all down, that's what produced peak performance. So number one, when we start with ourselves, our external world is a manifestation of what is going on inside. It,
yes,
it, it is.
yeah.
So number one, are you getting enough sleep?
Hmm.
Number two, are you paying your family, your group, whoever you share with, whatever it is, are you paying them enough time, enough love, enough energy? Because if you are, then you'll get it back. If you're not, then that starts to become more brittle and more transactional and less fulfilling. Got to get your priorities right.
That's right.
Yeah. Number three, have you learned how to say no? Most people don't like to say no. You have to learn how to say no. Well, boss, I can do that for you. Do you want me to do that before I do the other one? Which is more important? Oh, this one. Fine. I'll do that one first. And when I've finished that one, I'll do that one. Oh, but this is really important. Okay. Do you want me to do that one before the other one? No, because that's more important. Fine. Otherwise you get sucked into this strange washing machine where, you're not going to get out alive,
Right. Of
right?
course.
And you've got to have thinking time. When are you going to have your thinking time? You know? If you don't have thinking time, you're going to be replaced by AI. So AI is going to be amazing. It's going to be like Switzerland. It's going to be amazing at complicated, repetitive tasks. So the Swiss are some of the best at things that are done again and again and again, and it's refined and refined and refined until it's perfect. The Swiss aren't very good at when things come from left field that the system isn't designed for. So AI at this stage is going to replace complicated, repetitive tasks. So lots of planning things, lots of optimization things, lots of sequencing things. It currently can't replace human creativity, right? Because
Hmm.
ultimately, in its present form, it will change. Ultimately, in its present form, is just the world's biggest spelled predictive text.
Yes.
That's all large language, the LLM models are, is just predictive text. So if I was worried about what will AI do, I'd turn the question round. I'd ask the question, how could I use AI to make me more productive and give me more time to think and be creative? So it's what I call look at it through the other end of the telescope. I talk about this in the book. The other end of the telescope. Run around the other end. What does it look like from this end? So it could look like, so rather than a threat, wow, what an asset, you know? And in the process, learn about it. It's usually fear of the unknown. Will
Right.
things change? Absolutely. You know, um, the computer was going to replace everybody. If you remember, I think we're going to have 3-day weeks. We're going to be, oh, and what we're going to do with all our leisure. I must have missed an episode somewhere, the in-between episode, because I didn't get to that place. So think of it. So it's wonderful. Um, for example, if you're using it in your writing in some way, use it as like a buddy and chat with it. By the way, the politer you are to it, the better results you get. This is anecdotal, but I'm getting quite suspicious that it's quite smart. So don't just say I've got to write an article on X or I'm doing a presentation on Y. Go with it with part work. Go with it with I've got to give a presentation on this. Here are my key themes. I thought I would reference the work of so and so. What do you think? We'll come back. Yes, this is really good. Da, 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 da. Have you thought about? By the way, I think the quote you're looking for is.
Hmm.
Then work it, then go back. So use it. Don't, it's a dumb box. So it's not, so if you use it to do your presentations, they're going to be dull and boring. It's a bit like it'll come across as if it was a drunk librarian with perfect spelling and grammar who did this, Um, we can usually tell. Oh, that looks a bit AI-ish. So
Yes.
think of it less of as a threat, more of a tool.
So, Piers, what I'm hearing here is that for leaders to really go from stuck to inspired, first they need to assess, what they're doing on a regular basis, prioritize what they're doing, making sure that they have time for the normal life to be balanced and happy, and then also to have time to be strategic so that they can get inspired and move to that next level. And then also in all of this, as you mentioned, I mean, of course, leaders are the leaders of people. and we have to enable our people to also do their best work. And some of what we do is what we should be encouraging them to do as well. Making sure that they're having that time to be more strategic, that time to learn to work with AI effectively so that they can increase their productivity. And recently, a lot of leadership has been asking their people to come back into the office and restricting the remote environment at times. And of course, this is the higher time burden on those people, restricting their flexibility. So, what should leaders be framing and setting expectations for the workforce in this new environment?
Brilliant question. I have to go to my default position, which is which bits of it are working.
Mm.
So um, a couple of my clients have gone back to 100% office. The majority are hybrid with we'd like to see you more in the office than out of the office. Here are the very reasonable, we want you in 6 days out of 10 working or something like that. I think that, and also, I think you have to think about the most practical things. The most practical things are there is nothing more frustrating than going into work to go onto a Zoom call or a Teams call with all the other people at home. Because that's kind of right. So I've taken an hour to get here to do this and they're not here.
Yeah.
That's just terribly frustrating. So I think employers should also make sure there's enough seats and desks for all the people, because during this period of less people there, arrangements may have changed. They might have moved offices, all sorts of things, with not as many desks and not as many positions. Um, the key question I would be asking is, what are you trying to achieve? Right. Is this a control issue dressed up as a productivity thing? Which would be often my suspicion.
Right.
So if you're running a sales team, Sam, I guess you would be as happy as I would be if you never see them and they bring in the business. As long as they're acting ethically, morally, and the rest of it, and not trashing your reputation in the market.
Sure.
So the people in accounts never understand this. People in accounts never understand why a smart sales director lets a few of their wayward salespeople hardly ever come in because they always bring in the business. Right? That's their job. So you've got to ask the question, is your productivity really going up? Are you doing this for community? Are you noticing that there's less osmosis going on, that people aren't kind of just picking things up because they're not exposed to it, new people when they join? So I think if you've got real evidence and you've done the analysis, then make your case. And make it, look, I want to try this for 6 months because I think we're missing out on shared knowledge, shared experience. We'll track it. We'll be honest with each other at the end of the period. Let's regroup. But don't just do a mandate. People need to understand and remember also in the thinking, when you tell them you've been thinking about this for 3 months, getting more and more frustrated that you're the only one there on Friday, but it's going to be the first time they've heard it. So think about your communication.
Right.
And you've got to be very, very careful because, we've got an old bit of the brain, the amygdala, that often gets triggered. And, it was designed to do. So you and I were walking, we're ancient people walking the forest, and there's something that looks like a snake or a twig. So we got the prefrontal cortex. Oh, I wonder if it's a snake. No. So it's overridden by the amygdala, fight, flight, or freeze. This could be danger. In that case, freeze is a very good one. If the twig moves, it's probably not a twig. If the twig doesn't move, probably a twig. So we still have it, although we don't have the environment which it was designed for to be very useful in. But modern things trigger it. So unfairness triggers it. Um, your boss on your shoulder, where your autonomy is taken away, triggers it. Um, when you're not sure if it's a friend or a foe, triggers it. So, and the things that go with it are anxiety and discomfort because it's an override system. So, let's not set the amygdala off. Let's be thoughtful and a bit caring on this.
Right. And so what I'm hearing here, Piers, is that leaders should lead with metrics, and they should be empathetic and think about their people. And so, what I often say is that if we're finding that people are hitting the goals and are excelling in work, and then they happen to be able to take a nap at the end of in the afternoons, that's a win.
Yep.
So
It's difficult though, isn't it? You've been around this whole area of performance and reward for a long time, and it's complicated. It's very complicated. I'm, I've always been, but more and more and more now, the leaders I work with, the ones who are exceptional, are the ones who are happy to display their humanity.
yes.
And it makes a huge difference. You and I are sitting with someone, we can tell if they're truly listening to us. Uh, you can tell if they are actually going to do something about it rather than say, oh, yeah, we've really got to do something about them. Yeah, and pigs might fly. So I think people with integrity, a little bit of compassion and showing their humanity, these are the kind of people we want to follow. You can't be Superman. Stop trying.
Hmm.
It's a fool's game. It's a fool's game because every time you do it, the expectation is raised. So last time you came and you moved the boardroom table on your own. This time they're going to expect you to fly around the room. Don't try it. Don't try it.
That's right. Well, we are coming to the top of our time here, Pierce, and it's been wonderful
We've
to.
only just got
I
started.
know that's right. We should be having those long form 5 hour interviews. But one thing I wanted to bring up before we conclude is I know that there's a theme in your book about honoring the old while embracing the new. So what are those tried and tested leadership traits that never go out of style?
So this is parallel to leadership, but it's about hiring. Hire on integrity and ambition. So sometimes we need very particular skills. I wouldn't hire a brain surgeon just on integrity and ambition. I want a bit more than that. So that integrity and ambition, I think, is kind of the heart of our leadership. We should have integrity. We should have our humanity, as we spoke about. We should have ambition. I think we should also have a duty of care. I was brought up in a Quaker household. My mum was a Quaker. So this whole idea of servant leadership, I'm very, very comfortable with. Uh, there's a sweet spot where uh, ego and can do is balanced by care. And that's a very nice sweet spot where there's an ambitious leader for himself, which is perfectly good, for the organization, for his people. That in communication, because I think we often don't think enough about the impact of our communication. So I'd spend time on that. Um, the role of the CEO or the very senior leadership, CEO particularly, there's a couple of other qualities I'd add in, which would be the ability to hold paradoxical positions is often quite useful. Which is that for example, the product line isn't maybe what it should be, but this is what we've got, so this is what we have to do. So you have to hold these together. the willingness to admit you're completely wrong, which was something I was very comfortable with. You completely wrong about this. You were right. I apologize. So that's very healthy for self and the organization. And the third one, I think, is being willing to take quite significant decisions on very limited information. I remember we were rolling out something and we started in the Far East and rolling it out, and each country rolled it out. The feedback was negative. And I said, we're going to have to stop this. This is not right. I don't know what it is, but this isn't right. And someone said, oh, well, we haven't really finished the pilot project yet. And I said, I don't think we have to. I think we've got enough information. So the willingness to take decisions, and this applies to senior management, specifically CEOs, on very limited information, I think is a very important quality.
Very good. Well, for all our listeners that are out there, some senior leaders that are saying to themselves, I would love to have a bit of Piers time just to ask this one question. And how can they get a hold of you, Piers?
So very easily, number one, I've got a long and complicated name, but once you've got it, it's easy to remember. So Piers is Old English for Peter. So it's the same root from all the way from Peter, Pierre, Pedro, Piers. So mine's Piers. Fallowfield were the people who, when you rotate crops and you keep it fallow for a year, it's Fallowfield. And the Coopers were the barrel makers. So Piers Fallowfield-Cooper. So once you've got it, it's easy. So you can find me on the web instantly. My web page would come up. I'm on LinkedIn, delighted to connect. And also the book page, Are You Still the Future? That's another way to get to me. And I always connect with anybody who asks. And if anyone wants to speak or be curious, delighted to.
Well, thank you so much, Piers. This has been just a wonderful conversation, and I've learned so much, and I really appreciate you leaving this book that I'm sure that will be uh, looked at for years and years and years to come. So what a wonderful legacy to leave all of us in this wonderful manuscript, and I'm looking forward to learning more from you in the future. So thank you, Piers.
That's absolutely lovely. Thank you. Thank you so, so much.
All right. So for all of you listening in to the People Strategy Forum this week, we'll see you next week with another great conversation. All right. Take care.